So to answer this question, I have ice bottles of water in all of the cages during the summer to kind of keep them cool. We call it our hillbilly air conditioning. But basically, if this barn gets more than 70 degrees, I just throw these in here for the comfort of the animals. The only problem with the bottles is sometimes I have these jerks that like to chew through them. They'll put little holes in them, and then they like to spray the water everywhere. So every once in a while, we do need to replace the bottles. Let's talk about the statements here in this comment. For one, hay is not needed for the proper care of these rabbits, and that is because they are on a complete pellet. In that complete pellet is alfalfa hay, which provides the main source of protein and fiber for their gut health and growth. With that being said, every once in a while they do get hay, but it is just for their entertainment as well as their enrichment, as again, it is not needed. As for you not agreeing with me, that's perfectly fine. You're perfectly validated in those feelings. With that being said, I do get all of my information from the top AG colleges in the country. I really like Ohio State University, Michigan State University, Texas AMU, just to name off a few. And they have studies full of thousands of rabbits. That's a lot of data. A lot of data tell you what proper care is, which is what I abide by. That's also the information I give here on my page. With that being said, if you don't want to follow that advice, that's completely fine. But something we should not pretend is that rabbits are equivalent to humans. When you say at least provide some sort of soft bedding, or you should try to sleep on that, you're conflating the care of an animal with the care of that of a human. And these aren't humans. When you say provide soft bedding, you don't know that this animal isn't going to chew on it because it doesn't have a consciousness and a knowledge not to eat that soft bedding. That soft bedding could cause impactions. That soft bedding could be urinated on and cause urine scalds to the rabbit if it's left alone for too long. And I always hear, well, if you would just clean, pause right there and just listen for a second. If that urine is left even for a couple of minutes, it can cause urine scalding to the most delicate of rabbits' skins. Just like humans, some rabbits are very susceptible to chemical burns while others aren't. So soft bedding isn't an option because it can be detrimental to the health of these rabbits. Providing human care to rabbits is kind of like when you see people carrying around those tiny little dogs in purses and dressing them. Where there's argument to where a specific dog is not affected by that kind of care, that is not the norm along animal behavioralists for dogs. And that's because dogs must be treated as dogs, just as humans must be treated as humans and rabbits must be treated as rabbits. And again, you don't have to agree, but it doesn't make it wrong. The piece of flesh right there on this rabbit's neck is called a dewlap. On Wiley, it's not very pronounced because he is a buck, and it shouldn't become overly pronounced with a buck because if they stay in weight, they don't really have that big, glorious fluff. With that being said, with Penguin here, Penguin's a doe, and she's had a litter before, so she has a nice sized dewlap, and in theory, it'll probably get bigger as she has her next litter here. She's molting a little bit, so she's popping out fur. But what she's gonna do is she's gonna take the fur off of that dewlap, and she is going to stash it in her nesting box. Penguin is also very angry that I am not feeding her at the current second, and instead I am taking a video, so I'm gonna get her a little food real quick. But on a doe, it's pretty standard. You're gonna see it. On a buck, you don't see it quite as often unless the buck is overweight. With that being said, a buck having a slight dewlap isn't much of a deal. It's when it's like ginormous that I have heard judges say something. So if you look at Wiley, he doesn't actually have much of a dewlap, and that's kind of what you look for in a buck. Here's Moose. He's 3. He's another example of a buck that doesn't have a dewlap. And even Strawberry, who is by far my chunkiest mini Rex, doesn't have a dewlap either. So, like I said, it's something you commonly see with your does, but not your bucks. Everyone, this is Lizzie. We are picking on her hardcore today, but when it comes to posing, you're going to want to look at your rabbit's body type. Depending on their body type depends on how you should pose them. In our barn, we have commercial type and we have compact type, which means they get posed the exact same way. Lizzie was misbehaving, so I had to bring in the master. For those of you who don't know, this Fatty McFatterson is Strawberry. Strawberry is our top mini Rex in the barn. He has won many a show, and he gains weight on 1/8 of a cup of food a day. He's fat. Anyway, as I was saying, you want to take your rabbit. Their back foot should be posed in line with their hip. Their front foot should be posed in line with their eyes. And then you're going to want to give them a little squish. And that is how you correctly pose a rabbit. So, back foot in line with hip, front foot in line with eyes. There are a couple of different things you'll see when it comes to posing. There's something called overposing, which is where you squish the rabbit up too much. So this is an overposed rabbit. As you can see, their foot is too far forward. It gives a false idea of depth. It'll give a false short shoulder, and then it'll also throw off the balance in the back end and make the rabbit appear tuck. So again, we want to properly pose the rabbit, get them retucked up. Here again, nice round arch, nice and true full, not overposed. Now there's another thing called underposed. So this is where you allow the rabbit to not pose up properly like this. As you can see, the foot is still in line with the hip, the feet are still in line with the eyes, but you're not giving the rabbit that little bit of scrunch, and what this is doing is giving an underposed idea. It's giving a false appearance of the shoulder being long and the animal being flat. So, once again, just one more time to give you an idea for posing. Strawberry mostly poses on his own. He's shedding. Feet in line with eyes, feet in line with hips, and little scrunch. Nice rounded appearance. So that is how you pose a commercial and a compact type when it comes to showing rabbits. We don't bathe our rabbits. That's kind of counterintuitive when it comes to our rabbits. The only time my rabbits get a, quote, bath is if they have something going on with their behind and they need a SIDS bath, and at that point they get brought inside, they get their bath, and they stay there until they are 100% dry so that they don't get any issues with their core temperature, such as like hypothermia. Now, what we will do before a show is that we will take a damp terry cloth, so just barely wet, and we will just take it, run it over the animal, and what that does is it helps bring up any loose hairs, it helps bring up any dirt, but it doesn't necessarily change the animal's temperature or cause any problems to it. We will then also trim nails, check to make sure that the animal's in condition or isn't overtly shedding. Check to make sure that their tattoo doesn't need, touched up. And if it does, we'll touch it up. And then we'll also get a good weight on the animal to make sure it's not over or underweight. And with our junior animals, I double, triple, and quadruple check that they are either bucks or does. Just in case. You never want to get them on the table and they aren't what you say they are. Bunny. When growing up showing rabbits, we would have these classes that were pet classes, where you could basically show any kind of rabbit, whether it be mixed breed, pure breed, as a pet, and basically the only thing that counted for that rabbit is showmanship. In the area we're in now, that is not an option or a possibility for our 4-H kids, but it might be in your area, so I'd definitely check it out. When it comes to the ARBA, when you take an animal to show, basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to take a rabbit and fit it to the closest SOP available. Remember, you don't need a pedigree to show. The only thing you need to show is to have an intact rabbit with an ear tattoo. That fits a specific SOP. So for instance, Chow Chow back here, she is my little Californian kit, and she is probably the closest I have to a plain white rabbit. I know she's Californian, and eventually I'm going to take her to a show as a Californian here this winter when her points darken up a little more. And what you could try to do is to find what breed your rabbit is closest to and try showing it in an ARBA show. Now remember, you do have to tattoo and do all of that. With that being said, if you don't know what the breed is and it doesn't fit a breed SOP and you throw them into a show, I don't guarantee that they're going to do well. If you really want to show, what I would do is I would find a rabbit of the breed that you want to show. Now, there are other options for showing, like show jumping. I've seen people, they take their bunnies and they jump them like the dogs do in agility. I've never done that before. I'm more of the confirmation type show person. But there are options, and you can also check for show sources that aren't with the ARBA as well. What I would do is I would talk to your 4-H people, I'd talk to your FFA people, I would get a hold of some ARBA people and talk to them and see what your options in your area are for. I'm not saying that taking a mixed breed rabbit up against competition with a bunch of purebred rabbits is the best idea in the world. I'm just saying at least you could get an idea of what it's about, and that rabbit people are normally super helpful to try to get you to the right place so that you can do what you want to do. I went through all of my Rex babies from my most recent chinchilla litter, and I think I am down to my final 2 that I'm going to keep and grow out past the initial 5-pound weight limit for our butchers. And the first one that I am looking at keeping is this little broken chinchilla. It's a doe. She is absolutely gorgeous. I absolutely love her rufous. It's a nice balance on top with the black ticking into the rings into the center. With that being said, feeling her, I think I'm going to get dinged on a show table for her being too soft. But other than that, she has a really nice density on her fur. I just wish that it wasn't quite as soft. I do have a problem with that in my Rex lines, though. I do get ticked off for that a lot of times at show, and it is something we're working on. When it comes to type, if we can get her to pose off, and remember, this is a baby. When it comes to type, not too horrible for the age. These guys are only about 9 weeks old, so they are babies. But she's a little longer in the shoulder than I really want, but I do like how she kind of rises up into her high point. It's very balanced. I do wish she was a little bit higher. With that being said, again, great balance. She has a nice depth to height ratio, and overall, not a bad bunny. Next, we have the sister of that doe. I do not have the problems with softness on this one. I think I found a really nice balance on this one. We have a great density, but not too soft. I will say I don't like the roughness on this one as much. I want a darker ticking on the top of those hairs to give it almost a blacker appearance on that very, very top bit of the hair shaft. But overall, not horrible. I really like her. She is about 2 ounces smaller than her sister. Not a really huge difference, but enough to notice on the scale. With that being said, I think I like her type a bit better. She's a little shorter in the shoulder, a little more compact. With that being said, we still have a bit of that commercial look to her, shorter in the shoulder, as you can see, and higher on her high point and a nice more fullness to her. With that being said, these guys, again, are only 9 weeks old, so I do think this is the one we will end up keeping compared to the sister. With that being said, I don't want to say too early on the ones that we are going to keep or not, but overall, these two are just absolutely gorgeous from our pairing from Alpha and 1. So yes, rabbits will fill in more the older they get, and thankfully I have some mini Rex of various ages that are broken black to kind of show you the differences. So first we have this rear image of a mini Rex, about 8-9 weeks old. And again, we see the general idea of roundness, but if you look in up on those hips, you'll see that there are slight hip dips. Here's that baby from a top angle, and although she has a general idea of roundness, she is not as round as she will be as she gets older. Now, here is a baby at about 16 weeks. As you can see, we are much rounder in that hip area, although we do still have a slight hip dip. And here we see a top image of that baby, more round in the shoulders, could still use a little more rounding out in that hind quarter. And here, of course, we have Strawberry, who is a senior buck, and as you can see, he is completely filled in, completely round over that top line, even with him leaning slightly on his right side. Super round, super circular, super filled in. And here on this top line, you can see the shoulders onto the butt, around and around we go, is very, very circular, nearly perfect. Compared to the baby, that still has some thinness in the shoulders and on the hind end. Compared to that 16-week-old that is filled in up on the shoulders, but still needs some rounding in on the hind quarter. So basically what you're looking at to be filled in is that hind quarter up onto the top line. And then some width in that shoulder area. At least that's how it is with my compact types and my commercial types. They just fill in more. Like they go from kind of being almost diamond in shape to brick in shape.